On April 1st, 2024, 19-year-old Sade Robinson met 31-year-old Maxwell Anderson for a first date in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was a college student studying criminal justice. They went to a seafood restaurant, then to a downtown bar for drinks. Surveillance footage confirmed their movements throughout the evening. That night, Sade was last seen leaving the bar with Anderson. Her phone later pinged near his residence. She was never seen alive again. The next morning, a severed leg was found near Lake Michigan. DNA confirmed it belonged to Sade Robinson. Over the following weeks, more of her dismembered remains were found across various locations, including areas in Illinois. Her car was found burned and abandoned in a different part of Milwaukee. Investigators obtained a search warrant for Anderson's home. Inside his basement, they found blood evidence, cutting tools, plastic wrap, restraints, and cleaning agents. A confidential informant told police that Anderson had spoken weeks earlier about plans to kill and dismember a woman in his basement. Cell phone data, text messages, surveillance footage, and license plate readers supported the timeline and location movements. Anderson was arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson. His trial began in May 2025. After a brief jury deliberation, he was found guilty on all charges in June 2025. Sentencing is scheduled for August. This case involved clear signs of premeditation. The evidence showed a planned act rather than a spontaneous crime. Investigators determined that the victim was targeted and lured to a location where the murder had already been prepared.
Where we have an update in that devastating case that we've been following here at Court TV, the murder of Sade Robinson. In April, authorities arrested and charged suspect Maxwell Anderson in the death of the missing teen. They say that Robinson went out on a date with him on April 1st, the night that she went missing. Now, her car was eventually found torched and severed human remains were found scattered around Milwaukee, including a leg. Now, these remains were later confirmed to be that of Robinson. Now, in a motions hearing held for Anderson today, two issues were argued. First was whether Anderson would be allowed to have a computer in jail, and the second being a request to unseal the search warrant issued on April 5th for Anderson's residence. Take a listen.
Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Sade Carolina Robinson was 19 years old, a student at Milwaukee Area Technical College. She was pursuing a degree in criminal justice. Friends and teachers describe her as focused, ambitious, and committed to building a future for herself. She had a passion for justice and community safety, an interest that would tragically mirror the investigation that later surrounded her death. Sade was also active online. Her social media presence reflected a life filled with goals and self-care. She regularly posted about fitness routines, affirmations, and milestones in her education. She lived alone, valued her independence, and was considered mature beyond her years. She wasn't known for risky behavior or reckless decisions. To those who knew her, she was level-headed and responsible. Despite her criminal justice background, Sade walked into a situation that would prove fatal. She arranged to meet a man named Maxwell Anderson, 31 years old, for a casual date. The exact way they met remains unclear. Some sources suggest they connected online. Others say it was through mutual acquaintances. What is certain is that text messages show Anderson and Sade communicating in the days leading up to April 1st, 2024. They agreed to meet at the Twisted Fisherman restaurant in Milwaukee. It was a popular seafood spot, not unusual for a first date. After dinner, they moved on to Duke's on Water, a downtown bar. Everything appeared normal from the outside. Surveillance footage and phone data confirmed both were together until late that night. From there, Anderson allegedly invited Sade back to his place. She accepted, Anderson, however, had a violent history and a reputation for disturbing behavior. Details of his background would only emerge after the crime. The question arises, should platforms or dating apps reveal users' criminal records? And more importantly, how often do people accept invitations back to someone's home on the first date without really knowing who they are? Sade's story raises other uncomfortable questions. Can studying criminal justice give someone a false sense of security? Are young women equipped with the right tools and awareness before agreeing to meet strangers? Her case is a stark reminder that even educated, cautious individuals are not immune to hidden dangers. What happened next will uncover a level of planning, brutality, and darkness that no one saw coming. And it all began with one decision, trusting someone she barely knew. What kind of protection should young women be taught before going on dates with strangers? Does knowledge of criminal justice give a false sense of safety? How common is it for people to accept invites back to someone's home on a first date? Should platforms reveal more about users' criminal backgrounds? At approximately 5 p.m., Sade met Anderson at a local seafood restaurant, Twisted Fisherman, on Canal Street. Surveillance footage and digital evidence later confirmed both parties were present at the location. Staff and patrons noted nothing unusual about the pair's behavior. They dined, talked, and appeared to enjoy the evening. No visible signs of distress or conflict were reported. Around 7 p.m., Sade and Anderson relocated to another venue, Duke's on Water, a popular bar in downtown Milwaukee. Witnesses later testified, seeing the two drinking together. Bartenders recalled serving them both alcohol, but no one noticed signs of aggression or warning. Receipts and CCTV footage backed the claim that the duo remained at the bar for several hours. Sometime between 12:30 and 12:45 a.m. on April 2nd, both Anderson's and Sade's vehicles were seen on surveillance footage leaving the area. This was the last known public sighting of Sade. Cell tower data shows that her phone later pinged near Anderson's residence on South 11th Street, confirming she traveled with him to his home after the night out. That was the final trace of her digital presence. Her phone activity stopped shortly thereafter. Later that morning, around 7 a.m., a passerby walking near Warnemont Park, a lakefront area just south of Milwaukee, discovered a severed human leg. The limb was located near the waterline, partially submerged. Authorities were called immediately. Initial inspections confirmed the leg had been deliberately cut, not torn by natural elements. There were signs of clean dismemberment with sharp instrument precision. DNA testing would later confirm that the leg belonged to Sade Robinson. The news was not made public right away as investigators began searching for other potential evidence near the site. Simultaneously, Sade was reported missing by friends and family after she failed to respond to calls or show up for obligations later that day. Within 48 hours of the leg discovery, police located Sade's vehicle, but not in a parking lot or near her school. Instead, it was found burned and abandoned near 30th and Lisbon, a neighborhood far from both Anderson's home and the lakeside where the leg was found. Investigators concluded the car had been set on fire deliberately in an attempt to destroy evidence. Forensics found no blood or DNA within the charred vehicle, suggesting the crime did not occur inside the car. Over the next few weeks, the case escalated rapidly. As authorities widened their search of Lake Michigan's shoreline, additional human remains surfaced in both Wisconsin and northern Illinois. A torso was found days later, discovered by a fisherman along the coast. A separate search team recovered a partial arm in a plastic bag. In subsequent days, other parts, including a foot and a portion of the thigh, washed ashore in various locations. Forensic investigators determined all remains belonged to Sade Robinson. Based on tide patterns and water flow modeling, it was established that these remains had likely been disposed of in Lake Michigan from a common point near Milwaukee and had drifted southward over time. Analysts noted that the dismemberment had been done systematically, with clear knowledge of human anatomy and intentional effort to separate body parts. These findings raised significant concerns about the level of planning involved. The scattering of remains along the lakefront and the burning of the vehicle suggested steps were taken not only to kill and dispose of the body, but also to prevent identification and delay investigation. At this point in the investigation, The working theory shifted from a possible spontaneous act of violence to premeditated homicide with methodical concealment. Detectives began collecting surveillance data, digital records, and canvassing areas surrounding both Anderson's home and Warnemont Park. Their goal was to establish a clear movement timeline of both vehicles and identify any other potential evidence of transportation or dumping of remains. The severed leg was not only the first piece of evidence, but also the first confirmation that this was a homicide case. It linked the location, the suspect, and the timeline all within a 12-hour span. As more body parts were found, prosecutors built a narrative that this was not an impulsive crime but a planned execution involving tools, transport logistics, and a deliberate disposal strategy. What does this reveal about the level of premeditation involved in this case? Why would a suspect choose to scatter body parts instead of burying them in a single location? Should lakefront security and surveillance be improved in areas near urban centers? How could timely missing person alerts have changed the outcome of this investigation? As the investigation into the disappearance and murder of 19-year-old Sade Robinson intensified, a crucial breakthrough came in the form of a confidential informant. This individual, known to law enforcement but unnamed in court documents, came forward and provided disturbing information that pointed toward premeditated murder. According to the informant, Maxwell Anderson had openly discussed his intent to kill a woman weeks before Sade's death. The informant detailed conversations in which Anderson described, with specificity, how he wanted to lure a woman into his home and carry out a carefully planned execution. He allegedly described restraining the victim, killing her, and then dismembering the body to avoid detection. The plan included using specific tools, managing cleanup, and disposing of remains in separate areas to prolong discovery. Further statements from the informant revealed that Anderson had taken deliberate steps to prepare his home, particularly the basement, for the execution of this plan. Investigators obtained a search warrant and confirmed many of the informant's claims. In the basement, police found a disturbing scene. Saws, plastic sheeting, chemical cleaning agents, and heavy-duty restraints were located alongside a blood-soaked area later confirmed through DNA testing to match Sade Robinson. Forensic specialists concluded that the saws found at the scene were consistent with the cuts made to the remains discovered across multiple locations near Lake Michigan. Blood splatter patterns and luminol testing showed signs of attempted cleanup, though residual biological material remained. The presence of plastic wrap and chemical solvents also indicated an effort to control and manage the crime scene, hallmarks of a premeditated act rather than an impulsive one. Additional discoveries deepened concerns about Anderson's psychological state. On the night of Sade's disappearance, he had allegedly watched a violent animated episode from the series Love, Death and Robots, featuring a woman's dismembered body washing up on a beach, eerily mirroring what later occurred with Sade's remains. Prosecutors pointed to this as further evidence that the act had not only been planned but rehearsed in his mind through exposure to violent media. Should law enforcement act on pre-crime tips more aggressively before someone is harmed? How many people knew about this setup and said nothing? While physical evidence was crucial to tying Maxwell Anderson to crime, it was digital forensics and surveillance data that solidified the timeline and confirmed law enforcement suspicions. Sade and Anderson had communicated through text messages leading up to April 1st, 2024, the day of their first and only date. Investigators recovered this communication, which revealed plans for dinner at Twisted Fisherman and drinks afterward downtown. After their evening out, cell tower pings from Sade's phone showed her traveling with Anderson toward his residence. Her phone ceased activity shortly after midnight, with no additional outgoing messages, calls, or location updates. This silence contrasted sharply with her normally active communication pattern, prompting investigators to focus on the window of time between midnight and the following morning. Further evidence came from license plate readers across the city, which tracked both Anderson's vehicle and Sade's car. Around 12:45 a.m., both vehicles were recorded leaving downtown. The next confirmed location of Sade's vehicle was near Warnemont Park, where a severed leg was discovered. Later, the same car was found set on fire in a residential neighborhood, a tactic often used to destroy evidence. Perhaps most damning was the video surveillance from Anderson's neighborhood. It confirmed that Sade entered Anderson's residence but never exited. Security footage from nearby homes showed no other point of exit or re-entry, leading detectives to conclude that she had been killed inside the house. Surveillance footage also captured Anderson leaving his home early the next morning and making several suspicious trips with trash bags. Cell phone data, combined with license plate and surveillance footage, provided a nearly airtight narrative. Anderson's movements aligned with key evidence discoveries, and none of Sade's digital devices were active after she entered his home. Analysts concluded that her phone had either been turned off or destroyed within his residence. How can technology help prevent violent crime if used in real time? Would a tracking app have saved her? The murder of Sade Robinson quickly became a national topic due to the gruesome details and disturbing level of premeditation. News outlets across Wisconsin and beyond began reporting on the case once forensic teams confirmed that a severed leg found near Lake Michigan belonged to Sade, a 19-year-old college student studying criminal justice. The case continued to draw media attention as more dismembered body parts were discovered along the shorelines in multiple counties, including Illinois. Major networks such as CNN, NBC News, and ABC7 Chicago began to pick up the story, running frequent updates on the investigation. Locally, Milwaukee news stations provided continuous coverage, particularly after police identified Maxwell Anderson as the primary suspect. As investigators uncovered more about the tools found in Anderson's basement, and after a confidential informant came forward with details about a planned murder, national outlets started labeling the case as a calculated, premeditated killing. Public interest increased as surveillance footage, phone data, and digital messages between Sade and Anderson were presented. Reports emphasized the planning involved, from how Anderson arranged a meeting to how he disposed of her remains. Social media platforms circulated screenshots, news clips, and victim photos under the hashtag Justice for Sade, calling for transparency, justice, and broader awareness about safety for young black women. In response, the community organized vigils, marches, and murals to honor Sade's life. A mural featuring her image and the words, "Her voice matters," was painted near Milwaukee's South Side, and several candlelight vigils took place at her college and in surrounding neighborhoods. Public conversation soon shifted from mourning to activism. Many questioned how such a calculated murder could go unnoticed, and why early signs, such as the informant's warnings and Anderson's suspicious behavior, were not addressed sooner. This led to renewed discussions on systemic failure, particularly in how violence against black women is reported, prioritized, and handled by media and law enforcement. Advocates and commentators pointed out that while the case gained momentum eventually, it initially lacked the kind of urgent national coverage seen in similar cases involving white victims. Several opinion pieces, including those published by the Root and the Griot, examined the media's delay in covering Sade's disappearance and the early evidence. These articles raise a question: why do some cases receive more attention than others? Some experts suggested that missing and murdered black women often receive delayed or limited coverage due to implicit biases in media decision-making. Others pointed to how media framing, access to victim families, and socioeconomic assumptions influence how much visibility a case gets. Sade's case became a reference point in broader conversations about racial disparities in media urgency. Why do some murder cases gain national traction, while others are overlooked? What role does race play in determining how quickly and intensely media outlets respond to violence? The criminal case against Maxwell Anderson moved to trial in May 2025. He faced 4 felony charges: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, arson. The prosecution argued that Anderson planned the murder in advance. They relied heavily on the testimony of a confidential informant who claimed that Anderson had described a detailed plan to kidnap, kill, and dismember a woman weeks before the incident. This informant told police that Anderson had converted his basement into a controlled crime scene, equipped with plastic sheeting, saws, cleaning chemicals, and restraints. Investigators testified that blood evidence and forensic material found in Anderson's home matched Sade Robinson. They also presented digital evidence: text message exchanges between the victim and Anderson, GPS data, and surveillance footage showing Anderson leaving with Sade on the night she disappeared. They argued that the murder took place shortly after Sade entered his home, and that her body was methodically dismembered and dumped in Lake Michigan over the following days. The defense offered no strong counter-narrative. They acknowledged that Sade was at Anderson's residence, but claimed there was no clear motive. The defense attempted to cast doubt on the timeline of events, but did not dispute the forensic findings or Anderson's connection to the car or the disposal sites. They suggested that the informant could have fabricated details, but no alternative suspect or explanation was presented. After multiple days of testimony and the presentation of physical evidence, the case was handed to the jury. Deliberation lasted less than 45 minutes. On June 6, 2025, a Milwaukee County jury found Maxwell Anderson guilty on all counts in connection with the murder and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. The verdict came after a week-long trial that included graphic forensic evidence, digital tracking data, eyewitness testimonies, and detailed crime scene analysis. Jurors deliberated for less than 45 minutes before reaching a unanimous decision, convicting Anderson of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson. Throughout the trial, prosecutors presented a timeline built on surveillance footage, text messages, phone data, and GPS pings that placed Anderson and Robinson together on the night of April 1st, 2024. They argued the crime was premeditated, citing testimony from a confidential informant who claimed Anderson had openly described his plan to lure a woman to his home, kill her, and dispose of the body. The discovery of dismember remains scattered along Lake Michigan, and the recovery of blood, saws, and restraints in Anderson's basement further supported this narrative. During the sentencing phase, victim impact statements were read by Sade's family members. Her mother described emotional and psychological trauma caused by the brutal nature of the crime. Her father spoke about lost opportunities and a future cut short. Friends and former classmates expressed the fear and heartbreak that lingered in the community. The court acknowledged these statements, but proceeded in accordance with Wisconsin law. Sentencing was scheduled for August 15, 2025. Because Anderson was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide in the state of Wisconsin, he faces a mandatory life sentence. The court will determine whether he will ever be eligible for parole. However, prosecutors have indicated they will argue against any possibility of release, citing the calculated and methodical nature of the crime. This case raises important questions for the public to consider. Is life in prison enough for crimes as brutal? Should prosecutors be able to seek the death penalty in such premeditated cases? Following the conclusion of the trial, Sade's family shifted their focus from the courtroom to public advocacy. They launched a nonprofit organization called Sade's Voice Foundation, aimed at promoting safety for young women in dating environments. The foundation provides resources for self-defense, awareness campaigns on dating violence, and partnerships with colleges to educate students about red flags and new relationships. In addition to the foundation, the family filed a civil lawsuit against the establishments that served Anderson alcohol on the night of the murder. They argue that overserving played a role in Sade's death and seek accountability from both Twisted Fisherman and Dukes on Water, the two venues visited on April 1st. The outcome of the civil case remains pending. The local community responded to tragedy with sustained action. Several colleges in the Milwaukee area established scholarships in Sade's name for students studying criminal justice. Murals were painted in her honor across the city. Candlelight vigils, community marches, and annual awareness events continue to take place to ensure her memory is preserved. This case has also reignited conversations about broader societal issues surrounding safety, law enforcement, and digital culture. Legal experts and advocacy groups have pointed out a significant gap in how the justice system handles premeditated violence by first-time offenders. Despite red flags, including Anderson's disturbing conversations and suspicious online activity, there was no legal mechanism in place to intervene before the crime occurred. Another issue is a blind spot created by dating apps and casual online connections. While technology makes it easier for people to meet, it also introduces risks that are not always acknowledged. There is no universal system in place to screen for violent histories or behavioral red flags. Cases like Sade's highlight the vulnerability many people face when entering unfamiliar environments with strangers they met online. Additionally, some have criticized law enforcement for failing to detect or act on early warning signs. Although Anderson had shared his plans with at least one acquaintance weeks before the murder, no report was filed, and no investigation began until after Sade's body was discovered. In densely populated areas, the dangers of casual dating, lack of oversight, and delayed police response can combine to deadly effect. This case adds to a growing list of instances where first-time violent offenders exploited gaps in societal awareness and institutional response. To close, viewers are encouraged to reflect on the following questions. Should there be better regulation around private date meetups? What lessons can parents, schools, and communities learn from this? How can individuals be more proactive about their personal safety without falling into fear-based thinking? The Sade Robinson case is a stark example of what happens when calculated intent intersects with systemic gaps. Her story continues to influence policy discussions, public awareness, and community safety efforts. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.